Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2015, and this is in reference to the continuing unrest in Baltimore. I think I'm going to entitle it Baltimore Abandoned by the Bay. Because what I've noticed is there have been a lot of right-wing talk shows who have pretty much vilified the black population there, going after the mayor, going after the parents, going after the students, thugs, instigators, some really, really nasty stuff. And, there has some bad things that have happened. And anyone who is a part of that needs to be prosecuted if we can find all of them. It's not a good thing. But this did not happen in a vacuum. So, fortunately, I was able to find a number of statistics in reference to what's going on in Baltimore. That's why I say abandoned. Currently, it has a population of about 622,000, and they have about 16,000 abandoned buildings in the city of Baltimore. 16,000. And in Mr. Gray's neighborhood, approximately 1/4 to 1/3 of all the houses, commercial, residential, in his neighborhood are abandoned. And another interesting statistic about Baltimore is that the graduation rate in the city of Baltimore is 68.5%. The national rate is 80%. I know that some of the surrounding counties, the white counties, let's just say, much higher than 80%, probably many of them over 90%. And so, there's a big, big discrepancy. The per capita income in Baltimore City, 23,000. I mean, barely. That's the poverty line for someone with kids, 24,000. And it's not easy living in those areas right there. The national average for average income, about 32,000. Obviously, in some of the areas, I believe it's up to 69,000. Now, again, when I say abandoned, I do mean abandoned. So we take a look at the police force, approximately 3,500 people in the police force. 10% live out of state. That means that 350 people who work in Baltimore City drive in every day from Pennsylvania or Delaware. Could they actually come? I guess they could come from Virginia. And, it's really hard. Virginia might be quick, but but if they live in Pennsylvania or they live in Delaware, it's an hour with absolutely no traffic whatsoever. So, they're in and out of there as quick as they possibly can. Another 60% live outside of Baltimore City, meaning only 30% of the people who work for the police force in Baltimore City actually live in Baltimore City. Now, the firefighters, 1,700 firefighters in the city of Baltimore. The numbers are approximately the same. 10% out of state, 60% out of Baltimore City, 10 or 11%, I think, for them in the 10 or 11% out of state, 60% out of the city, 30% in the city. Then you also have the mayor's office. And if this is somewhat indicative of all of the agencies, city government agencies in Baltimore City, if that's indicative of all of them, that would mean that approximately 60 to 70% of all of the employees in Baltimore City live out of state. It's hard to have that feeling of camaraderie that you really want to help your city when you don't even live remotely close to it. So, what was the last thing that I wanted to bring up? The last thing I wanted to bring up is that they did some other studies, and then since 2011, approximately $5 million has been spent by the Baltimore police force paying out money for bad behavior by police personnel. $5 million since 2011. Another $5 to $6 million was spent on legal fees, just on the bad behavior of those police officers. And some of those things were against women who had no weapons on them. So we can see that people of color, and this has mostly been a people of color. I think the article that I read basically said, just think how much that $10 million could have been to fixing up parks, making after-school programs available, making high school gymnasiums or whatever more available, so the kids can play more often, or any other type of thing that would help kids get nurtured, get some structure, hopefully get some discipline. Also, they found out, and I remember I mentioned that Baltimore City has approximately 625,000 residents. In the time frame from 2004 to 2006, there were approximately 100,000 arrests per year. Now, yes, I know that many people are arrested multiple times, but that's an astronomical number of what's going on there. What was the last thing on that? In Mr. Gray's neighborhood, where he grew up, where he died, the unemployment rate for all men of working age in that 18 to 60 some age bracket is close to 50%. So again, remember I mentioned that there are 16,000 abandoned buildings housing in Baltimore City. In the neighborhood that Mr. Gray is in, approximately 25% to one-third of all the buildings, residential, commercial, in his neighborhood are abandoned. Now, I mean, this is trouble. This is what causes trouble. So there are a lot of things that are going on in Baltimore that would indicate that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the way things are going there. The police have had a very heavy hand, and that most of the police, 70% of the police do not even live in Baltimore City. And, normally the type of thing that I see when, I'm only speaking about me, when I'm on the job, I can't wait to get the hell out of there. Maybe they're not the same way, but as I said, this rioting, this looting, this behavior did not happen in a vacuum. And I don't know how Baltimore has been abandoned so much. If the city leaders can't get money from the county, the state can't get money from the federal government in terms of what type of programs can be had. As I've said many times before, the amount of money it's probably, approximately 30% more in terms of the money per student that's poured into the outerlying counties around Baltimore, as opposed to what's paid for by the city. Their facilities, many are run down. As I said, they don't have a great graduation rate. Yes, there is a tremendous amount of trouble in there, but as I said, it did not come in a vacuum. That things have been bad in Baltimore for a long time. There's a clear indication that the police have been heavy-handed for a long time. There's a clear indication that when people see the police, they want to run away, even though they are not, may not be guilty of anything, because they don't want to get pulled over for any reason whatsoever. And especially if they suspect that something might be planted on them as an excuse to take them away. Which happened, who was that guy? Floyd Dent up in Detroit, the Detroit area. I don't know, can't remember the exact area. And just imagine how much different it might be. And here's another thing. Baltimore lost approximately 100,000 manufacturing jobs, which at the time, many of them were union, from about 1950 to about 1990. They had a huge plant there with Bethlehem Steel called Sparrows Point, employed around 25,000 people. By the time in 1970, 1975, that started to dwindle down. No one was working there after 1990. So, we have poor education, we have terrible housing, we have extreme unemployment, etc. So, as I said, these things didn't happen in a vacuum. And, Dr. Phil was actually on one of the Fox News shows. I think it was Brian Kilmeade, who basically talked about, bad parents, disrespectful children, blah, all this other stuff, painting the picture of the black people as being, and he even said they had the same opportunity. And Dr. Phil pointed out everyone has the same opportunity, but their opportunity is very limited because the resources they have are and this is the only way to put it, structurally deficient from what white people have. And I would like to see that changed, and I would like to see that changed quickly. I realize that it will not happen quickly, that this is going on in many, many cities across the United States, in fact, all the major cities. We need to have a whole new policy of education, of after-school activities, school lunch programs, mentoring programs, jobs programs, all of that stuff on an extended, high basis. And if we have to raise taxes to do that, that should be done.